Have you ever watched someone slowly treat you like you no longer matter? Have you ever stayed awake at night, replaying every conversation, wondering where everything changed, wondering why the same person who once chased your attention now acts as if your existence means absolutely nothing? If you have, then don't skip a single second of this message, because today is not about revenge. It is not about making someone cry. It is not about begging for love. Today is about something much more powerful. Today is about teaching someone the price of ignoring you, not with anger, not with desperate messages, not with emotional outbursts, but with a level of growth, confidence, discipline, and self-respect they never believed you were capable of. The biggest mistake people make after being ignored is believing they have to fight harder for someone's attention. They send longer texts, they make more phone calls, they try to explain themselves again and again. They become available every single time. They keep proving their loyalty to someone who has already decided not to value it. And every time they do this, they unknowingly lower their own value. Think about it. Have you ever seen a diamond begging to be picked up? Have you ever seen the sun asking people to look at it? Have you ever seen success chasing laziness? No. The most valuable things never beg for attention. They attract attention by becoming impossible to ignore. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that love means sacrificing yourself until someone finally appreciates you. But real life doesn't work that way. The more you abandon yourself for someone else's approval, the less they respect you. It hurts to hear that, but sometimes the truth is exactly what your heart needs. There are people who don't appreciate your kindness because they never had to earn it. There are people who ignore your messages because they know you will send another one. There are people who disappear because they believe you will always wait. And there are people who underestimate your worth because you keep giving them access without requiring respect.
Listen carefully. People rarely value what costs them nothing. If someone can lose your attention today and get it back tomorrow without changing their behavior, then your attention has become free, and what is free is often taken for granted. This is why your first mission is not making them regret losing you. Your first mission is becoming someone who respects themselves so deeply that nobody can casually disrespect them again. Imagine waking up one morning without checking your phone to see if they finally replied. Imagine going through an entire day focused on your goals instead of their silence. Imagine laughing again without secretly wishing they were there to see it. Imagine becoming so emotionally independent that their opinion no longer controls your mood. That version of you exists. The only question is whether you are brave enough to become that person. Most people never do because comfort is addictive. Pain becomes familiar. Waiting becomes a habit. Hoping becomes a lifestyle. But winners understand something different. Every minute you spend chasing someone who ignores you is a minute stolen from building the life that could have made them respect you naturally. Let that sink in. Every workout you skip because you're heartbroken, every opportunity you ignore because you're overthinking, every dream you postpone because you're emotionally exhausted, every hour you waste refreshing your messages, that is time your future can never get back. One day you will either look back and thank yourself for choosing growth or regret wasting years trying to convince someone to see your value. Nobody can make that decision except you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people ignore you because they think they can find someone better. Sometimes they ignore you because they assume you'll never leave. Sometimes they ignore you because your constant availability has made you predictable. But regardless of the reason, the solution remains exactly the same. Stop trying to change their mind. Start changing your life. Because while they're busy underestimating you, you should be busy upgrading yourself. Read more books, build your body, strengthen your mind, increase your income, heal your emotional wounds, expand your skills, become wiser, become calmer, become harder to manipulate, become impossible to replace. The greatest comeback is never an argument, it is transformation. The loudest statement you can ever make is silent progress. People expect you to cry. Surprise them by becoming stronger. They expect you to chase, surprise them by walking away. They expect you to remain the same, surprise them by becoming someone they no longer recognize. Remember this forever. Your silence after disrespect speaks louder than 1,000 emotional conversations. Your discipline after heartbreak inspires more people than your tears ever will. Your success after rejection becomes proof that your value never depended on someone else's opinion. You are not here to force people to love you. You are here to build a life so meaningful that those who fail to appreciate you become a lesson, not a destination. Every painful goodbye carries hidden energy. Most people waste that energy on revenge. Wise people invest it in self-improvement. Every broken heart contains enough fuel to build an extraordinary future if you stop pouring that fuel into sadness and start pouring it into action. So ask yourself today, what if the greatest thing that ever happened to you was being ignored? What if that rejection was actually redirection? What if the silence you hate today is creating the strongest version of yourself tomorrow? Because history is filled with people who were overlooked before they became unforgettable. The difference between them and everyone else is simple. They stopped asking, "Why don't they choose me?" and started asking, "How can I become the best version of myself?" The moment you ask that question, your entire life begins to change. Now let me ask you something that may change the way you see your entire life. What if the person ignoring you is not your biggest problem? What if your biggest problem is that you have been ignoring yourself for far too long? Think about the dreams you abandoned just to keep someone comfortable. Think about the opportunities you said no to because you were waiting for one message, one phone call, one sign that they still cared. Think about how many mornings started with anxiety instead of purpose because your happiness became dependent on someone else's attention. That is not love.
That is emotional dependence. And emotional dependence quietly steals your confidence one day at a time. Every time you allow another person's behavior to decide your mood, you hand them control over your life. You become a passenger while they become the driver. But here's the truth. No one deserves that kind of power over you. Your peace should never require someone else's permission. Your confidence should never depend on someone else's validation. Your future should never be placed on hold because someone chose not to recognize your worth. The strongest people are not the ones who never get hurt. They are the ones who refuse to stay broken. They cry, they feel the disappointment, they face the loneliness, but then they stand back up with a different mindset. They stop asking for attention and start demanding respect from themselves first. Because self-respect changes everything. When you respect yourself, your standards rise. When your standards rise, your choices improve. When your choices improve, your life transforms. That transformation is what makes people regret underestimating you. Not because you planned revenge, but because you became someone they can no longer reach the same way. Listen carefully. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide between chasing people or chasing greatness. You cannot fully commit to both. One path drains your energy, the other multiplies it. One keeps you emotionally exhausted, the other builds a future that speaks for itself. Which life do you want? Do you want to spend another year hoping someone finally notices your value? Or do you want to spend the next year becoming so valuable that opportunities, friendships, success, and confidence naturally begin to find you? Your answer will determine your future. Never confuse attention with appreciation. Someone can give you attention without respecting you. Someone can text you every day and still take you for granted. Someone can say they love you while consistently making you feel unimportant. Real appreciation is shown through consistency, effort, honesty, and respect. Anything less is simply emotional entertainment. Stop accepting crumbs when you deserve a full table. Stop celebrating the bare minimum from people who should have been giving their best all along. The moment you stop rewarding disrespect with unlimited access is the moment your life begins to change. Imagine someone walking away from you, believing you would always remain exactly the same. They expected your world to stop. They expected you to stay available. They expected you to wait. Then, months later, they see you healthier, stronger, more disciplined, more confident, smiling again, building your career, chasing your purpose, surrounded by better people, living with peace they never thought you could find without them. That moment is priceless, not because they finally notice you, but because you finally realized you never needed their approval in the first place. That is freedom. Freedom is waking up without emotional chains. Freedom is no longer measuring your worth by someone else's attention. Freedom is knowing that whether they return or disappear forever, your direction remains the same. You keep moving forward. Winners understand that pain is temporary, but the lessons learned from pain can create permanent strength. Every disappointment teaches boundaries. Every betrayal teaches awareness. Every rejection teaches resilience. Every season of loneliness teaches independence. Life is never happening against you. Sometimes it is preparing you for a version of yourself you could never become through comfort alone. Gold is refined by fire. Diamonds are created under pressure. Strong character is built through adversity. If everything had gone exactly the way you wanted, perhaps you would never have discovered how powerful you really are. The person who ignored you accidentally gave you the greatest gift possible. They revealed exactly where you had placed too much of your identity. Now you have the opportunity to rebuild that identity on something stronger. Build it on discipline instead of emotions. Build it on purpose instead of approval. Build it on integrity instead of temporary attention. Build it on becoming the kind of person who inspires respect wherever they go. Because confidence is not something you wear. It is something you earn through the promises you keep to yourself every single day. Every early morning workout, every chapter you read, every healthy decision, every difficult conversation you face, every excuse you refuse to accept. Brick by brick, habit by habit, day by day, you build a version of yourself that nobody can take away. And once you become that person, everything changes.
You stop fearing rejection because you know rejection cannot reduce your value. You stop fearing silence because your peace no longer depends on another person's voice. You stop fearing endings because every ending creates space for a better beginning. That is how emotionally powerful people think. They understand that losing the wrong people often makes room for the right life. So from this moment forward, promise yourself one thing. Never again will you chase someone harder than you chase your own potential. Never again will you sacrifice your future just to keep someone interested. Never again will you ignore your own dreams while trying to become someone else's priority. The greatest message you can ever send to someone who ignored you is not a text, it is a transformed life. And transformation begins the moment you decide that your story is no longer about proving your worth to others. It is about proving to yourself that you are capable of becoming everything you were created to be. There is something almost magical that happens the moment you stop trying to force people to see your value. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You reach for your phone out of habit. You wonder if they will finally call. You imagine what you would say if they suddenly came back. Your mind wants to return to the same emotional prison because it has lived there for so long. But every single time you choose discipline over desperation, you become stronger than you were yesterday. That is how transformation begins. Not in one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of quiet decisions that nobody else will ever see. The world celebrates results, but it is your private habits that create those results. Nobody applauds the early mornings when you choose the gym instead of staying in bed. Nobody notices the nights you spend learning a new skill while everyone else is scrolling through social media. Nobody sees the tears you wipe away before deciding to keep moving forward anyway.
But those invisible moments are creating an unstoppable version of you. One day, the world will call you lucky. They will admire your confidence, your success, your peace, your discipline, but they will never fully understand the price you paid to become that person. And that is perfectly fine, because your journey was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to transform you. Stop asking why they ignored you. Start asking what this experience is trying to teach you. Maybe it is teaching you that your heart is too valuable to be placed in careless hands. Maybe it is teaching you that your kindness needs boundaries. Maybe it is teaching you that your biggest investment should always be yourself. Every painful chapter carries a lesson that can either make you bitter or make you better. The choice has always been yours. Imagine standing in front of a mirror 1 year from today. You have kept every promise you made to yourself. You are physically stronger, mentally calmer, financially wiser, emotionally independent, spiritually grounded. You no longer seek validation because you have built confidence through action. Now ask yourself this question. Would the version of you standing in that mirror still spend sleepless nights worrying about someone who once ignored you? Of course not. That version of you understands something your current self is still learning. People can only reject the version of you they knew. They cannot reject the person you are becoming. Growth changes everything. Your energy changes, your standards change, your conversations change, your friendships change. Even the opportunities that come into your life begin to change. Why? Because you no longer settle for environments that require you to shrink yourself just to be accepted. You stop apologizing for having ambition. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You stop apologizing for saying no to people who only appear when they need something from you. There is incredible power in becoming unavailable for anything that destroys your self-respect. That does not mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means becoming selective. Strong people do not give unlimited access to everyone. They understand that trust is earned, not automatically given. Respect is built through consistency, not empty words. Love is shown through actions, not promises. Never let beautiful words blind you to ugly behavior. Watch what people repeatedly do, because patterns reveal character far more than excuses ever will. If someone truly values you, you should not have to constantly convince them to treat you with basic respect. Healthy relationships are not built on chasing. They are built on mutual effort. They are built on honesty during difficult conversations.
They are built on loyalty when life becomes inconvenient. They are built on choosing each other even when emotions fluctuate. Anything less will eventually leave you emotionally exhausted. Remember this. Your life becomes easier the moment you stop trying to be enough for the wrong people. You were never created to fit into every person's expectations. You were created to become the highest version of yourself. And that journey requires courage. It requires walking away from situations that no longer honor your value. It requires saying goodbye to people who only remember you when they feel lonely. It requires accepting that not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people arrive as blessings, others arrive as lessons. Both have value if you are willing to learn. One of the greatest mistakes people make is confusing attachment with destiny. Just because someone occupied a large part of your heart does not mean they belong in your future. Sometimes the hardest endings protect the greatest beginnings. Sometimes the closed door is saving you from a room that would have slowly destroyed your confidence. Trust that what leaves your life creates space for something greater, but only if you refuse to spend the rest of your life staring at the closed door. Keep moving, keep growing, keep believing that your best chapters have not been written yet. Because the most successful people in the world all share one thing in common. They refused to let rejection become their identity. They allowed rejection to become their fuel. And fuel only has one purpose. It moves you forward. So every insult, every disappointment, every broken promise, every ignored message, every sleepless night, every tear that nobody saw, let all of it become fuel. Fuel for your discipline, fuel for your purpose, fuel for your dreams, fuel for building a future so meaningful that one day you will look back and smile, not because someone finally realized your worth, but because you finally realized it yourself. That is the day your life truly changes. That is the day you stop surviving and start living. That is the day you stop chasing attention and start attracting respect. And once you reach that point, nothing and no one can ever take your power away again. There comes a point in every person's journey when silence becomes louder than words, when absence becomes more powerful than presence, and when being ignored stops feeling like pain and starts becoming clarity. Because clarity is what remains when emotional confusion finally burns out. You begin to see things as they truly are, not as you wished they were. And that realization changes everything. You understand that you are not losing someone valuable. You were releasing someone who never truly valued you in the first place. That is a difficult truth to accept, but once it settles in your mind, it becomes a source of strength instead of suffering. Because now you are no longer chasing illusions, you are building reality. And reality is simple. People treat you according to the standard you accept, not the love you give. You can give your entire heart, your attention, your loyalty, your time, your energy, but if you do not set boundaries, all of it can be taken for granted. Not because you are weak, but because human behavior naturally follows convenience. People often choose the path that requires the least effort. If you are always available, you become expected. If you always forgive, you become assumed. If you always return, you become replaceable. This is not bitterness. This is awareness. Now imagine something different. Imagine you stop reacting. You stop chasing. You stop explaining your worth to someone who repeatedly ignores it. At first, they notice your silence. They wonder why you are not reacting the same way anymore. They assume you will return to your old patterns, but you do not, because something inside you has shifted. You are no longer emotionally reactive. You are intentional. And that shift changes the entire dynamic. This is where real power begins. Not in loud arguments, not in emotional breakdowns, not in trying to prove a point, but in controlled silence backed by self-respect. Silence is not weakness when it is backed by growth. Silence becomes a message. It says, I am no longer available for confusion. It says, I am no longer participating in cycles that drain me. It says, if you want access to my life, you must meet a higher standard now. And that message is far more powerful than anything you could ever type in a message.
You stop craving responses. You stop measuring your worth through someone else's attention. And something unexpected begins to happen. The same person who ignored you starts noticing your absence. Not because you are trying to be noticed, but because you are no longer predictable. Predictability makes people comfortable. Unpredictability makes them curious. And curiosity often leads to reflection. They begin to question their assumptions. They begin to wonder if they underestimated you. But by the time they realize your value, you are no longer in the same emotional place you once were, because growth changes your direction. You are no longer waiting in emotional standby mode. You are moving forward. You are investing in yourself. You are building habits that strengthen your future instead of feeding your past. And when a person is focused on growth, they naturally become less accessible to emotional confusion. That is when life begins to feel different, not because someone came back, but because you stopped needing anyone to complete you. Let this be clear. The goal is never to punish someone for ignoring you. The goal is to outgrow the version of you that tolerated being ignored. Because every time you choose yourself, you reinforce your value. Every time you prioritize your peace, you elevate your standards. Every time you walk away from emotional inconsistency, you move closer to emotional freedom. And emotional freedom is powerful. It means you no longer negotiate your self-worth. It means you no longer accept inconsistent love as normal. It means you no longer confuse attention with affection or presence with respect. You begin to understand that real connection does not require chasing. Real connection flows naturally, without pressure, without confusion, without emotional exhaustion. So if someone ignored you, let that moment be a turning point, not a permanent wound. Let it be the moment you stopped shrinking yourself for people who could not see your value. Let it be the moment you started expanding your life beyond emotional dependency. Because one day, you will look back and realize that what hurt you was not their absence, but your attachment to someone who was never aligned with your growth. And when that realization fully lands, you will no longer feel the need to teach anyone a lesson. Life will do that naturally. Your progress will speak, your transformation will speak, your peace will speak, and the loudest statement you will ever make is simply becoming someone they no longer recognize, not because you changed for them, but because you finally chose yourself. And now we reach the part most people never truly arrive at in their healing journey, not because it is difficult to understand, but because it is difficult to accept completely. The final truth is this: you were never meant to convince someone of your worth. You were meant to embody it so clearly that it becomes undeniable even without your explanation. The moment you stop trying to be chosen by people who are unsure about you, you begin to choose yourself in ways that reshape your entire life. And that is where everything shifts permanently. Because self-choice is the beginning of every real transformation. Think about how much energy you spent trying to fix silence, trying to decode mixed signals, trying to turn inconsistency into something stable. Think about how many times you lowered your expectations just to keep someone close. And now realize something important. None of that effort increased your value in their eyes, but it slowly reduced your value in your own eyes. That is the hidden cost of emotional dependence.
It does not just drain your time, it quietly reshapes your identity. But there comes a breaking point, a moment where you finally understand that love without respect is not love. Attention without consistency is not security. And presence without effort is not commitment. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. You begin to reorganize your life around standards instead of emotions. You begin to ask better questions, not "do they want me?" but "do they deserve access to me?" That shift alone is powerful enough to change your entire direction, because now you are no longer available for confusion. You are no longer available for half-effort connections. You are no longer available for emotional guessing games. You are building something different, something stable, something grounded in self-respect. And here is what most people never realize until much later in life. The moment you stop chasing people, you start attracting better energy. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you change. Your standards become visible in your behavior. Your boundaries become visible in your silence. Your self-respect becomes visible in your decisions. And people respond to that energy differently. Some will step closer with respect. Others will step away. But both outcomes serve you. One brings alignment, the other brings clarity. So, if someone ignored you, do not turn that into a lifelong story of rejection. Turn it into a chapter of redirection, because what feels like loss in the moment is often life removing what does not belong in your future. And what feels like silence today may actually be the space where your strongest version is being built. Now imagine your life from this point forward. You wake up without emotional confusion. You no longer check your phone hoping for validation. You no longer measure your self-worth based on someone else's attention. Instead, you are building discipline, you are building confidence, you are building focus, you are building peace that does not depend on anyone else's behavior. That version of you is not far away. It is not imaginary. It is simply waiting for one decision. The decision to stop returning to what broke you and start committing to what builds you. And the day you fully make that decision, you will feel something different inside you. Not loud, not dramatic, but calm. A deep sense of clarity that says, I am no longer available for anything that disrupts my peace. And that's the final price of ignoring you. Not anger, not revenge, not emotional chaos, but distance, growth, silence, and a life that no longer includes someone who once thought you would always stay the same. Because you did not stay the same. You evolved. You learned. You outgrew. And in the end, the greatest message you ever send to the world is not what you say, but who you become when you finally stop settling and start choosing yourself.